Well, doesn't time fly when we're having fun? And there's been a crap load of stuff going on elsewhere on the planet, which we're not even going to mention today, right? We'll just kind of skip that for the moment because I think everybody's had enough of all that shenanigans. But it is time for catch up over coffee. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by, good on you, mate. Thank you very much. By Mike Clark. And for those of you who haven't met Mike, these days, he's part of the leadership team and also the Queensland leader of the very, very well-renowned Dent Global organization, which has as its centerpiece the, very, very profound program of learning called the Key Person of Influence Accelerator program. It's a program that I've undertaken myself. So with all of that as a great big intro, let me just quickly say, g'day, Mike. How you going?
Cheers, James. Great to be here, my friend. Thanks for having me on, and looking forward to having some great chats over coffee.
Beautiful. All right. So you raised your cup, which is great. I'm just going to share with everybody my cup because I got a special. I got one of the new
got my GSD cup, mate.
Cups. So cheers, mate.
Cheers to you.
So, mate, the obvious point that we would take the conversation is around Dent and KPI. So I'm not going to go there just yet, right? In doing a little bit of research on this character called Mike Clark, what I learned was many, many years ago, you were an honours student who did a Bachelor of Business with a double major in business psychology and human resource development.
Yeah.
Yeah. What took you down that path?
Years, mate. You did do some good research.
Yeah. What took you down that path?
You know what? Interestingly, my grandfather went to Harvard.
Right.
So I was actually born in the US. So half of my original family's from there.
Okay.
And when I was quite young, we moved to Australia. And so I lived on the Gold Coast from the age of 6 onwards. But with when you have a grandfather that goes to Harvard, there's a sort of an expectation, I would say. Right. It wasn't forced. It wasn't like you've got to, or you'll be kicked out of the family.
Yeah.
But it was more a subtle expectation of that university is the way forward. And I figured out a rhythm of studying in my high school years that allowed me to get good grades while still enjoying life.
Right.
So I hacked the system in a way with my study habits. So and I enjoyed studying. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so when I finished high school, I went overseas backpacking for a couple of years. Thought I'd be gone for 6 months, went for 2 years.
As we do.
And then when I came back, I literally just had to go, I literally had to go through the list on of the uni subjects, because it was just a generic one to begin with. And I just chose topics that were of interest, which were usually psychology and business. So so at one point I was at a crossroad where I was like, do I go down the psychology pathway?
Yep.
Then I could do the mathematics, but I just didn't enjoy it. I was I would have forced myself to do all the maths and the analysis of studies and stuff, and it just wasn't my jam. I like the psychological aspect of it. So that sort of led me down this pathway of having an interest in both the human resources and business psychology. So it's a blend of those two things from that sort of background, which is sort of where my business career ended up, is in that human potential psychology as well as entrepreneurship. And that's my two intersect. So it was an expression of that, I would say, mate.
Very cool. Very cool. And interestingly, you and I actually have kind of tandem paths in that regard, although clearly I'm much, much older than you are. So, I was probably reading textbooks while you were online and stuff. But, so, I did a Bachelor of Social Science with a double major in behavioral psych and human resource development. So similar paths. And of course, both ended up with same kinds of interests and going down kind of aligned business directions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Very cool.
Other piece that I know about you, because this appears very, very boldly on your LinkedIn profile, and I love it. You're a proud daddy.
Yes. Well, as you say that, I just realized that I have a little ouchie on my finger, and I've got if you can see it, I've got a butterfly or a flower.
Yeah.
It's a flower Band-Aid, because my daughter this morning, I was trying to tell her a story and she was obsessed with my finger. and would not let me go any further until she put a Band-Aid on it. So
how good is that? Right?
yeah.
Very nice, very nice. But I love that you've declared that, right? I mean, LinkedIn profiles, we're all very serious. We're all promoting ourselves in one way or another. But you very, very clearly defined yourself as being a little bit different and proud of, you know, being a father and all that kind of thing. Was there anything that kind of led to you doing that?
Yeah, quite simply. I mean, with the background that I had with building, you know, this business, the LinkedIn training organization, which became the largest in the world, actually, was that's what we would teach our clients and a lot of corporates. We trained very heavily in the corporate space. And so we would train a lot of them to just put little like magnets out there. You know, in Dent language, we'd call it like your, you know, it's the mountain of value, the things that are important to you. They bring out the shades of your life, because we're not all just professionals, right? Everybody does this for, you know, for their hours, whatever hours they put in. And then on the weekends and in the evenings and in the mornings, we're all doing something. And so, we always encourage people, when I was doing the LinkedIn training, to just put into their profile things that are of interest to them, because when people go to your profile, it gives you the opportunity to have interesting conversations like this.
Yeah, right.
You know, there are little hooks out there. So that just sort of meaningful things for me. I'm a big family person. It was a very difficult situation we had going through having children. So I'm very fortunate that I've got two little monkeys, two little girls. They're 3 and 4 now.
Wow.
So I feel incredibly grateful. It's a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And so that's what's important to me. But it's so interesting when you do that, because people who do take the time to read your profile, it gives them an easy conversation starter, effectively, by sharing that. And particularly if they share that interest or that passion, then they will be able to pick up on that. And so just a little example, this is, you know, when I also have my headline that I'm a football fan.
Yes.
So the number of times that I've started a conversation with people is just ridiculous. When it was, particularly when I was in the LinkedIn training game, that actually won me a deal with Royal Bank of Scotland.
Is that right?
Head of global talent management. We're at a LinkedIn event exclusively. And then I had we did a rock your profile stand. So as part of this exclusive agreement we had with LinkedIn, we were invited with all our trainers to run this rock your profile stand at LinkedIn's biggest event of the year for their clients, called Talent Connect. And effectively, we had about 10 of our trainers there, and then I was on one of the stands. This guy came up. He was the head of talent acquisition for Royal Bank of Scotland, which is one of the biggest banks in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he came up, and first thing he saw when he saw my profile, football fan. You're an Aussie. Is it the real football or the cheating kind? And I was like, mate, of course it's the real football. And he said, oh, and then straight away, no, actually this was even before he said that, he said to me, he said, oh, I'm a bit of a gun on LinkedIn. I don't think you'll be able to teach me anything. And then I sort of I said, well, let's see how we go. First thing he saw was that, and that kicked off this conversation. And then I looked at his profile, and it was all corporate. I said, well, that's the first lesson I've got for you. Put out there things that humanize who you are, and give out little special invitations. I said, we've just had a 5-minute conversation about football and kicked off. Well, now we're connected, and now we've got a meaningful sort of intersection between each other. That led to us doing, we trained over about 4,000 people inside Royal Bank of Scotland. So that ended up being a very big deal for us. So those little things, you just don't know where they go.
Yeah, right. Those tiny little things that can make an absolute astronomical difference. That's great. Good stuff. So 2 little girls, 3 and 4. Wow. That's, my kids thankfully are 22 and about to turn 21. And so distinctly different conversations today with them, which is just fascinating. And I love it, seeing my young adults emerging. But 3 and 4, those conversations of curiosity and excitement, right?
Oh, it really is special times. I consciously stopped saying to myself and to others, because as you know, you get what you pitch for, and you're always pitching. And I realized I unconsciously was pitching, it's so hectic. And I kept saying, it's so hectic. And I said this for a while, and I caught myself going, hang on, appreciate these moments.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so now I love these moments, and I carve time out of my day in the mornings and in the evenings to just be there and be present with them, because it's so special. It's just little things. Like today, my daughter was not a one of my daughters hasn't been well, so she wasn't going to kindy. And then my other daughter was starting to cry in the car. Oh, how come Kita's not going to kindy? And I had to give her that whole, well, I've got a special surprise. And she's like, oh, if you're a good girl and don't cry. So just, you know, just that imagination you can capture with them. It's just very special times.
Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well done. Yeah, you know, I've often said that young kids spell the word love as Time.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, I remember when I heard, I'm not sure where I heard that originally as well, but I agree. And that's what I'm so conscious of, is they just want to spend time, don't they?
Yeah.
They want to know you. They're like, we are their world right now. And don't burst my bubble, mate, but I'm sure at 21, we still are their world.
They are. They are. Absolutely. Both of them, thankfully, pride and joy. There's no doubt about that. So I won't burst your bubble. All good.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very special times. And particularly when you go through challenging circumstances, to have them, you then appreciate even so much more, I think, as well.
Fantastic. You know, so as I observe you from a distance, I get to see quite a lot of you because, of course, I'm a member of Dent Global. You know, I've participated in the program. You know, you're often running workshops and seminars that I'll sit in the audience of, and you know, I get to see a fair bit of you on social. And one of the things that I get to observe about you is, you know, you are, at least, you know, from an outsider's viewpoint looking in, enjoying what I would describe as lifestyle. Yes, you're a successful entrepreneur and business owner, and there's all sorts of bits and pieces that come with that. But what I also see is it would appear that you are living a life of choice. Is that a fair observation?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, short answer is yes. You know, I think I've always got aspirations of where I want to be, and there's always sort of the next level of where that is.
Yep.
But absolutely, this move back from the UK to Australia was a decision whereby we want to be close to family. I'd worked my socks off in the UK for many years, and sort of put in about a 15-year stint where it was living, eating, breathing business,
right,
day in, day out, every weekend. And so having children was a real sort of like a moment in time I wanted to get to, where I wanted to make sure that I started shifting my focus and priority. And I live by this philosophy that I learned very early on in my business career. I heard this, I was listening to it was a CD back in the day. I did Amway in my first few years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did it for about, not a few years. It was about 9 months I did it for. Right. When I was about 21, 22. And there's this guy listening to the tapes as you do. I'm not sure I don't think they were cassette tapes. I'm pretty sure they're CDs by that point. and they were saying, you either pay now and play later, or you play now and pay later.
Yeah.
So I said, screw that. I'm young. I just want to jump into this. And I just decided to pay now so I can play later. So I'm starting to carve out time for playtime, you know, which is definitely a big part of the philosophy of running the business, for sure.
Fantastic. Okay. So, you know, you did the degree that you did, which was, yes, Bachelor of Business, but it's got the psych and the HR development kind of leaning towards it.
Yep.
But, and again, you know, correct me if I'm wrong here, in a bit of a sweeping generalization, what I would say has been the constant stream throughout then your professional life has been, in a way, being in sales.
Yeah.
That's true. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and you know, same for myself, you know, when it's all said and done. And it's interesting because I've been in denial of this fact for many a year. And in fact, I'm partway through writing the book, you know, that all we good KPIs are you know, enthused to do. So I'm about 13,000 words through the book, which is going to be called The S Myth. Right. And
I love it. Yeah, that's great.
Borrowing off the E Myth. Right. And the byline is, you know, what every small business owner must learn about sales, right?
Yeah.
The art and science of sales. The opening line on the book, or the opening kind of paragraph, is quote marks me saying, look, I don't want to do the sales stuff. you handle the sales stuff. I'll just do all of the product development. And that was me talking to my then business partner as we stepped into an elevator, right?
Yep.
The really bizarre thing about it was the business we had was a sales training business.
Right?
Yes. There was I, co-owner of a sales training business, and I didn't want to be in sales, right? And it's really taken until I started this business for me to sit comfortably with the notion that I am in sales. So anyway, long-winded kind of route into my question. You know, you've got that qualification that you've got, which is psych and human resource kind of bent, but you've ended up in sales. How did that happen?
Really funny story. This is how the seedlings of everything that you're now involved with, really.
Right.
So going back to uni, graduated uni, got out of there, got a HR manager role inside a boat building company here on the Gold Coast.
Right.
I realized after a few months I was there just as a puppet. The guy didn't want to change anything, and it was just really just his ability to say, we've got our HR department, which they weren't changing anything, and clearly made that clear. And so I just thought, screw this. And at the same time, best mate of mine, we both graduated together. We lived together in uni, and we were challenging each other to get into business.
Mm-hmm.
He went off around to start a business at the same time, and I thought, and then he invited me to this event, which was happening. And it was, at the time, I think we were 23, 24 maybe.
Right.
And so effectively at this event, it was at this sort of like, it was a training program for business owners and environment, similar to what we do, but a lot of differences.
Yep.
And they had this evening workshop, and it was run, and the person who was speaking at this workshop was a 23-year-old kid who was going to teach adults, because I still consider myself, as an adult, but a young adult, still a kid in a way. Going to teach, business owners how to build a successful business and how to create wealth. And I thought, what gives this guy who's my age the right to do that? So my friend said, you want to come along with me? I said, yeah, I'd absolutely love that. So we went to this event, and sure enough, that's the first evening that I met Daniel Priestley, who was speaking, and Glen Carlson.
Okay.
Glen wasn't on stage, but he was sort of sitting off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I just made a commitment in that moment. I said, these guys seem like they got it together. And at the same time, I'd already been reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but it was
Mm-hmm.
around that time. And then the words jumped out of the page me, getting back to your sort of story about sales, is in that book, you're saying that if you want to become a world-class entrepreneur, you've got to learn to sell.
Right.
You're always selling. You've got to sell to, you're selling yourself whether you like to sell or not, right? It's a pitch. You either love selling or you don't love selling. And either way, you're selling yourself either way.
Yeah.
And so you're selling your team, you're selling your partner, you're always selling. So his whole point was you may as well just get in and understand it so you can really start to use it effectively. So at that point, I then sort of said to Dan after the event, I said, listen, I'd love to catch up with you. So we caught up about a week later, and I just said, I'm coming to work for your organization. And he said, I don't have a sales role available. And I told him I want to get in sales. He said, I don't have a sales role available. And I said, well, you do now. And he went, okay. You could tell I was hungry. And I just said, let's do this. And so I said, I'll come and join your team. And at that time, we just secured this contract with a particular organization. I went along to one of those events. And then we had a pretty radical first year in business. I joined them as a consultant. So it was my micro business inside their business. And effectively that year, we turned that business into one of Australia's fastest growing franchise organizations. Took them from about $1 million turnover to just shy of 11 million turnover. And, we ran 174 events that year. So
that was back in the days of triumphant events. Is that right?
Triumphant events. That's right. Yeah. So triumphant events.
Very cool.
And then we gave them so much growth, they couldn't sustain it. So then we had to cut off the contract, and then we won the opportunity to promote a couple of speakers. He said, let's go to the UK market. And with this previous organization, we'd always had the ambition to go global.
Yep.
And so when we had the opportunity to launch into the UK, we thought, well, the economics work. There's 3 times the population inside the size of one of our smaller states. And at the time it was like 3-1 to the pound. So we thought this is a no-brainer of an idea, so let's do it. And that's when went over there, did what we did, and a few years later, Dent emerged. So,
right. Okay. So if memory serves me, part of your time up in the UK was during the last GFC, yeah?
Yeah, it was, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. How did that impact you guys?
Brutally is the short answer.
Yeah.
Very thriving business. We're just at a growth stage, so we just expanded. So I oversaw affiliates and partnerships as well as a sales team. So I just brought on board about another 3 people to the sales team. So we probably had a team of about 6.
Right.
We just expanded offices, and we did all the classic moves of naive entrepreneurs thinking that the good times from the peak of 2007 was going to continue rolling on. Should have seen the signs coming once BlackRock went down, once Lehman Brothers collapsed. And when you've got there's an interesting thing about the UK is that there's a thing called the square mile, and basically inside this financial square mile, it drives, that's where all the big financial organizations reside. And that drives around 80% of the GDP of the entire UK inside that 1 square mile radius. Right. So once the financial markets get hit as drastically as they did, it was a dramatic correction. So it just meant, and we had some products, we had a multi-million business, well over 5 million turnover business, and a big portion of that was linked to the US dollar products. So all of a sudden overnight, the price of those programs went up by like 30%, and right. People started bailing out, and it was just like catastrophic. So that being said, very difficult to go through, but it led to everything that you saw. Without that, we probably would have kept doing what we were doing. Yep. And it forced us, and particularly Dan, to go on and sort of codify what we'd learned over that sort of 6-7 year period, right. About showing people how to stand out in their industry. And then it birthed, what is now the key person of influence methodology. So although it was a very difficult time to go through, yep. It led to everything that we're incredibly grateful for and fortunate to have done over the last 10 years. Right. So, and then at the same time, I then went on to build this business, which became,
and I'm going to come to that in a moment. I guess the thing about the KPI book and content and the catalyst for it, it lends itself very readily, right, to diamonds are forged under pressure. Steel is formed under intense heat and all that kind of thing. And so out of those, dramatic, catalytic, confronting, potentially devastating moments can come, powerful outcomes.
Absolutely.
Let me skip then, the journey for a moment and bring us up to more recent time, because each and every one of us now has been, and to some degree is still being, confronted with an uncertain economic future. To what degree are you seeing what's happened this time round being the same as the GFC experience, or are there differences in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. So there's obviously some fundamental differences overall in that, there's a pandemic, which was the catalyst for this. Yep. That being said, though, this was predictable in terms of a recessionary market. It was, if you talk to any macroeconomist, they would tell you that this was due to happen. They couldn't tell you when. They couldn't have told you what would be the trigger, but they would have told you that sometime between 2018 and 2021, there's going to be a correction in the market. It always happens. We're on an 18-year bull run, and then that started in 2013. And so there's always a correction somewhere between 3 to 6 years in that period. And so that's why I ran an event called Future Proof 2019 Plus with Tim Dwyer, who you know. Yep. This was the end of 2018, just to let our clients know in the community. So, hey guys, expect this to happen. Don't freak out, okay? Because it is coming. But just know that the rest of this decade is going to be really exciting. So, and what do you need to do now to get ready for it? So long and short of it is, I'm definitely far more prepared this time round than last, let's say. I think obviously the pandemic is a completely new kettle of fish. I mean, it's really just thrown every country into disarray in terms of how they manage it. And, we'll be able to look back in a year or two and go, well, and with hindsight, this was the great way to go about managing it, et cetera, et cetera. So every country, I believe, is doing the best it can. And tough decisions need to be made. And so some businesses, through no fault of their own, are just being, stopped overnight. And, and what it's doing is what I find fascinating is about this one. And I think I'm far more observant to it because we're so well connected to businesses and such a breadth of businesses, is it's really fascinating to see just how some industries spiked as a result of it you wouldn't imagine, and because some decisions have been made, like cybersecurity as an example, just like exploding. Other businesses are really, because the way they're set up, are set up to be a more efficient model. And sometimes the less efficient models are being exposed. As example, retail, when there's a lockdown period, those with physical retail stores not allowed to buy from them. But those who have been set up in an e-commerce fashion are able to benefit from that. So anyone in an e-commerce space has done incredibly well. And what I observe about that is I do believe that recessionary periods, what they do is they expose inefficiencies in markets. And so I suppose what I'm observing of a lot more this time is that there are some inefficiencies that have been exposed. And those markets that have been, those businesses that were already gearing up to a new model, perhaps was a bit too early and probably struggled for a number of years. All of a sudden it's like, boom, the time is right, and poof, they're getting their heyday now. And those with a less efficient model are going to have been the ones that have been unfortunately exposed. And so so it's really fascinating, really fascinating. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, mate, but it's there is a number of differences, and every country is different, because Australia was protected last time by the oil and mining situation, whereas the financial markets in the UK was so heavily linked to the economy that just really exposed everything. So it really is country by country is going to be differently impacted and affected, how quickly the economy can get back up. So I think there's a number of differences, but the generalities is those who are efficient versus inefficient.
Yeah, indeed. And I remember one of the things that Tim shared with us as he, went through that prediction as well, was then in terms of his overarching advice to us was, when it hits, yes, sure, you're going to need to do some things to protect yourselves, but do not go down into the bunker, right? Don't go and hide.
Exactly.
Start investing, start creating, start building the assets, start really preparing for when the firing gun goes off. Make sure you're already in the starting blocks when that gun goes off, when the recession officially comes to an end.
Sorry, no, and that's exactly right. Is that the rest of this decade is going to be exceptional. Personally, I'm just coming from the UK, where you had that market, and then just as the market was coming together, Brexit came in and just threw the market into a whole bunch of uncertainty. And then moving back here, this has kicked off again. So it's been a pretty tumultuous last 10 years, let alone all the political stuff going on, right? And the pandemic and everything, just from a market perspective. So personally, I'm just looking forward to this, putting this behind us in 12 months time, and sort of like you said, starting blocks ready to roll. But now's the time to get ready for it, not in 12 months time. Like 12 months time is too late, because then, everyone else that has prepared is going, all right, markets has taken off again, recession's over, let's game on and let's go. For those businesses who go, oh crap, let's start digging now, let's start preparing now, you'll be way behind. Particularly when you have models that'll be scaling in terms of assets, that'll allow them to reach, thousands to, many thousands to hundreds of thousands of people, even millions potentially, versus businesses that are just starting off on that level. It's going to be two different categories. And the mindset right now is incredibly important, and resilience that we need to build and to have in the focus. It's actually why I'm running an event coming up. It's called Reboot 2021. And it's about, we need to reboot ourselves. We need to reboot our mindset, our skill set, and our focus to make sure that our head's in the right space. We've got clarity of what we're doing so that we can navigate. I think this next 6 to 12 months is going to be prickly, You know, it's going to cause a lot of uncertainty, particularly once JobKeeper runs out. You know, there's going to be a feeling in the market. There's a little less cash available by people. They'll be like really starting to feel it. So that's why I'm running this event, to say, let's just be prepared. Let's keep our eyes on the prize. Just know that it will get a little prickly, but coming out the other side of it, I love what you're saying. Get ready in the starting blocks. Already done your warm up, done your stretches, you got your shoes on, like you're ready for the gun to go, so you can.
Yeah, good stuff. All righty. You know, I think one of the things that maybe not every business owner, but lots and lots of us, you know, who are somewhat entrepreneurially minded, have as one of our bigger ambitions or one of our bigger desires is this idea that one day somebody comes along and offers to buy the business from us, right? And that's something that you've actually achieved, and that was with the Really Connect business, yeah?
Correct, that's right, yep.
Talk us through that journey. You know, talk us right from the beginning to the moment that you got to say, holy moly, we've just sold it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for asking. I don't get asked that question too often, actually. So, yeah, I mean, it obviously is a big ambition when you set out to grow a business. And so with this particular business, you know, it was a Belgium-based organization. When the financial crisis hit, I went through and I found this organization. We started chatting. I could see that LinkedIn wasn't being adopted in the corporate space, but the timing for it was right.
Yeah.
And these guys were the market leaders, really. So I did a deal. We secured the rights. I expanded them outside of Belgium. Then we acquired the original business. And we fought for tooth and nail over a 12-month period to secure an exclusive agreement with LinkedIn, and whereby their sales reps, by that stage, there was about 2,000 of them across Europe, could only recommend our organization to all of their clients across Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Wow.
And so that was a really big opportunity for us, which we wanted to capitalize on, because at that stage, when you're playing a small business in the corporate game and you're trying to secure, corporate salespeople, and you've got to pay them decent rates in order to get them in. And if they make a sale in the first quarter, you're lucky. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, great. So, and I wanted to scale this up. We wanted to go from our team of about 6 at that stage, plus we had about 10 trainers. I wanted to scale this up quite significantly. So we started going around looking for investments. We got a few different mentors who sat on our board. This one guy who was the head of the Sully Family Trust, which is a very wealthy family trust. It's a $10 billion trust in the Sully family actually has French heritage. In the Louvre in France, there's 3 wings of the Louvre, and one of the wings is a Sully family wing. So they basically give all their art. And this guy was a chairman of that organization. So I got him to sit as our financial advisor and chairman for our business. He used to fly over from Monaco in his Spitfire and land into this place we'd meet in the middle of England, and we'd go to meet with him once a month. And then he sat on our board because I was trying to raise millions of pounds, and I'd never done that before. So I thought, who's going to give me millions of pounds? Whereas if I had this guy on my board, I thought, well, this is chump change to him. So that just positioned us in a really interesting space. And we're going out there. We started to get some serious interest from investors. There's one organization, which is a Silicon Valley startup, an organization called Scredible, that was very interested in scaling their business. They had a bit of technology, and the pitch to investors at the time was they wanted to become the Uberization of education. And in order to do that, they needed to have a lot of trainers using this technology to train people. So long and short of it, we started chatting. They knew that we'd already scaled up. We'd done a lot of train-the-trainer programs inside companies like ING and others. And then we could scale our trainers. We'd started doing that through this process. We were up to 25 trainers and consultants, could deliver training in 12 languages. And we just kept talking over about a 6-month period, an issue for investment. Then as they got to know about our business, eventually came to the point, they just said, well, listen, how about we just acquire you guys? And we're like, what would that look like? And then they sort of put forward a deal, and it was a 7-figure deal in total. About a third of it was in cash up front, and then the other 2/3 was in shares, basically, in the organization. And we got rolled up into that business and went from there. But that's how it all sort of came together. But yeah, it was obviously a very very proud moment.
Yeah, good on you, mate. Good on you. Yeah. And not in any way to diminish it, but yeah, I can well imagine that you would have been saying, so why on earth would this guy be interested in investing in us, me?
Yeah.
But what it suggests, and knowing that I know you in the way that I do, and the things that you and Dan and Glen teach, clearly there was a formula in place that helped bring that about, right?
Well, I mean, so you say that, right? Initially, had you sort of said from the beginning that someone wants to acquire us, I would have gone, okay, why? But as we started going through this process, any negotiation, you've really got to understand what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
And in our game, it was not cowboy industry, but we knew that there's no professional organizations doing what we were doing, because the kickoff to this group that they started, they had this big massive conference. They paid for about 30 or 40 of the UK's leading social media trainers. They paid for about 3 days for us all to hang out in this big fancy place in England for about 3 days, just network, understand it. They were just sussing out the market, trying to say who's there, who's the players in the market. And it was really fascinating when we went around this table, we all talked about our businesses. We were really about the only organization that was doing it at a professional level. Right. We had about 15 training sessions a week that were going on. We were charging about £3,000 to £4,000 per session for these. Our competitors were one-man bands, lucky if they had 2 sessions a week going on and charging a third of what we were. Right. And I was like, the first time I went, holy crap, wow, this is like, nobody else is doing it close to the level we're doing it. And it became really obvious. So when that came into place, and then as we got to know more about what Scredible was trying to achieve, it actually became like, hang on, we're really valuable to these guys, because nobody else can do what we're doing right now. So that's where the sort of the alignment and the synergy came from, because we knew that was what they wanted, and we were the missing piece for them.
Right.
So, so I think every negotiation, you might sort of look at it from the outside and go, oh, hang on, how does that happen? But you've got to appreciate and recognize your value. And then particularly with, adding into, yes, part of the formula was adding to our board, executive board, some senior people who knew what they were doing, dovetail in some strategic partnerships with LinkedIn, et cetera. It became a really nice concoction of an acquisition.
Yeah, fantastic. And it reminds me of a phrase, and I'm not quite sure where the origins come from. My memory is suggesting Napoleon. I may be wrong here, but there's a phrase along the lines of "gather about ye good lieutenants."
Yeah.
And often it's not lieutenants, would suggest people who are subordinate, but it's equally as important, right, to have good, strong, solid advisors and people who are smarter than you and who are more connected than you. And
mate, it is the way of the future. If I mean, just think about Silicon Valley, right? So I'm just sort of reconnecting a couple of cables and stuff here, mate. Sorry about that. So if you think about Silicon Valley, right, and imagine you are an investor, okay? Imagine you've got millions of pounds, and this was a really big insight into Silicon Valley world when this company acquired our business. But imagine you've got 100 million. You want to put your money somewhere. What are you going to do with it? And what will give you confidence and certainty that it's a good investment? It's like, well, yes, but you can look to the business owner and things of that nature. But if they can turn around and say, well, I've been guided by people who have done this before, people who have, already been there, done that, got the t-shirt, they've been working with us for the last number of years, or you're part of that environment where you get to know the business over a 6-12 month period, you've shaped their offering, for you then to go, well, now I get it. I believe in it. Let's put some serious cash in this, and the likelihood is going to be far greater. Yeah. So I've always been a fan of mentoring from everything that we've done from the very beginning. We never could have done anything throughout our journey without mentors sitting over our shoulder, which is why I'm passionate about what we do. A good friend of mine has got a business that is doing incredibly well. I'm talking like, phenomenal levels of success. And the catalyst starting point to it was him being in a mentoring group where he met the person that was the key person that expanded to do what they're doing now.
Right.
So these environments, you just never know what you take away from them, but they are invaluable in my opinion.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm not sure who actually coined this phrase again. I think it might have been Jim Rohn, but the phrase is, if you want to lead, you got to read. Right. And, you know, you guys are prodigious producers of books for all of us to read. But one of the things that I've experienced of you, Glen Carlson, your business partner, and Daniel Priestley, your business partner, is there's an amazing amount of wisdom that you all seem to possess individually and collectively, which kind of blows my mind because each of you are considerably younger than me, right?
Yeah.
And I look at the three of you and I hear some of the things that come out of your mouths. And one of the things that I really, really respect and appreciate about all three of you is I know you're incredibly well read.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Has that been something that's always been in you?
Well, you know what's interesting on that front is that getting back to that, the early stages of where it all began was my Amway experience.
Mm-hmm.
Was that I said that at the time, I used to say that was the two best decisions I made that year. Was number one, getting in Amway, number two was getting out of it. And I say that sort of jokingly. I know a lot of people in multi-level marketing type businesses. They do incredibly well. It just wasn't my jam at that time. But what it taught me, the biggest, most valuable thing it taught me was that if I'm going to go out there and achieve anything in life, I've got to hustle. I've got to get out there and I've got to develop myself.
Yeah.
And so I was relentless with just consuming information and consuming that. And you talk about Napoleon Hill. I'm actually rereading Think and Grow Rich at the moment.
Right.
And, so that was one of the classics that I just really I've read it numerous times throughout my journey.
Yeah.
And I'm going through it again and applying all the exercises and everything. And so yeah, and then when I was insatiable, I developed over uni this insatiable habit for just seeking, those who were doing some cool things, business owners, studying them. And then I got into Amway, I was taught that I've just got to develop and study and build out my skill set. And then I was reading Think and Grow Rich and say, you need that mastermind group. And then when I came across Dan and Glen and the Triumphant team back then, I was like, finally, I got some dudes who are, just as hungry as I am. And so we all got together and we'd just talk about how we're up to, what are we later studying? We're getting into quantum physics, and we've got Dr. Emoto and water particles and how your intention changes the structure of them. And it was just a fascinating time and insatiable. And our business was an expression of that. Like, I know we're sort of getting close to the time for this, mate, but a quick little story on this is when that story I shared from going from 1 million to 11 million turnover, we all sat around the table when they cut the contract off. We all sat around the table going like, crap, what are we going to do now? And I remember we were studying two speakers who we just thought their wisdom was amazing, having a huge impact on us. And we thought, wouldn't it be awesome to promote guys like that and share that knowledge to the world? And I remember we all sat around the table just chatting. We weren't saying we were going to do it. We just thought about, wouldn't that be cool? Sure enough, literally within 2 weeks later, talk about power of mentors, we pitched, Dan was hanging out with Paul Dunn, who was our mentor at the time. Yeah. And he just mentioned this. He said, love these two guys. And he goes, well, one of the guys is going to be in town next week. Do you want me to hook you up with him? He was like, yeah. So all of a sudden he caught up with him and then he told him what he'd done. He got, holy crap, you're around 174 events. Like, what about you launch this in the UK? And it was like, yeah, okay, great. So within literally 2 weeks of sitting around saying, wouldn't this be awesome? We had the opportunity to promote these guys in the UK, or one of them in the UK. And once we did that, another mentor knew the other guy and said, well, he's been trying to crack the UK. Why don't you guys talk? And all of a sudden, the two speakers who we said that we would love to promote, we were launching in the UK. I had to pack my bags about a month or two later, join Dan in the UK and yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, and it was just an environment where we were promoting those type of speakers, but we were sponges. Yep. I lived it, ate it, breathed it. Sometimes we would run 18 events in a week, all in this stuff. We'd be then talking to people about it afterwards. We were living it, just consuming it for a number of years. So that's where that background of depth comes from. It was an intense, at least 7-year period of just engrossed in it. And then we got more specific around strategies and business and yada, yada, yada. So yeah.
Fantastic. I remember at around the same time as I heard that phrase, if you want to lead, you got to read. I think somebody deliberately said to me, if anybody ever tells you they want to be a leader in their field, check out their personal library and you'll see how serious that is, right? And I'll just do a quick push over here because I'm kind of quite proud of, there's my little library over there.
Nice.
Yeah. Probably should be able to zoom in on that. But anyway, yeah, you know, I'm a passionate and avid reader.
Yep.
Of course, these days we've got the joys of audio books and all that kind of stuff, which is great.
Yeah.
Mate, with the last few minutes that we've got left, you know, as you know, I specialize in helping small business owners to recruit their first sales professionals.
Love that.
Thank you. What are your words of wisdom for business owners? And you know, one of the things that kind of predicates what we do is that we know that when a business owner is thinking of hiring a person, there's a will I, won't I, will I, won't I, what if it doesn't work out? What if I make the wrong hiring decision, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What would be some words of wisdom that you would have for a small business owner who's at that point where they're thinking about bringing a salesperson on?
First of all, I think that it's such an important step to take, because the bottleneck will become yourself consistently in that stage. So I absolutely applaud and love what you do, Jane, because you know it's so critically important to get there. And I think that through this lens of doing that is you've got to, first of all, it's a scary step to take, you know, particularly when you're stepping out of that. But I would encourage to just prepare and make sure you're ready for that step. Yeah, you know, like just map out, how do you sell what you sell? How do you do what you do? Why is this an amazing opportunity for people to get involved with? Know your numbers, because anyone who's good at this stuff is going to know their number. They should be asking the questions about the numbers to be asking. So you need to know your numbers. You need to know your process. You need to know how you sell. You need to be able to equip this person with the right knowledge and the information, and equip them with everything they need to get out there and get cracking. And to think about that sales training asset mindset. So the one thing I'd say is a sales training asset mindset, because if you can think about that, what it does is it forces you to then say, well, what do I need to have in place in order to prepare and equip these people? And if you think about that, then it's an ongoing game. Like, we're relentlessly talking about how do we equip, how do we get better. I never feel like I'm there personally. Like, I just never feel. I had an interesting chat yesterday, even though this person, I said, wow, look at all this stuff you got. And I'm still like, yeah, it's still not good enough. You know what I mean? I just feel like I need more. So we're relentlessly, you know, always talking about it, trying to figure out ways to improve and support our team with that. But, you know, it's a mindset, I think, to have. Yep. And, you know, and just if you can get in that mindset and just think about, imagine if you were them, why is this such an amazing opportunity? What are the numbers? What do you expect? Because you can only manage through the numbers. And if you don't know them, they won't. And then if you don't have a process for how they sell what they do and do what they do, it'll be a dog's breakfast. So I'm sure you would sort of echo those things, and you know, that's why I think it's critically important to think about that, and then ongoingly, how do you support them? You know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, I think, you know, lots and lots of small business owners reach a point where they imagine that the new salesperson is going to be some magical silver bullet and that everything suddenly metamorphoses into beautiful butterflies. And then 6 or 7 months later, when that hasn't happened, they'll point the finger of blame at the salesperson as they, you know, de-hire them, and potentially the recruiter as well. Yeah. You know, and so I'm often at pains to talk with business owners, and I'll just do a quick plug and say, if anybody wants my guide, which is the 13 reasons to not hire a salesperson, just hit me up and I'll send that to you. Right. But, you know, I will often have that conversation around the lines of, you're not ready. I know you think you're ready. You're not ready. You don't have the ecosystem in place to genuinely support this person to be successful. Right?
Exactly right. Exactly. Well, I think it's important to have that in place, right? Because it becomes challenging, and you got to think about how you're going to measure them, how you're going to track it, how you're going to know if they're doing the work or not. And you got to have a way to be able to test with people, you know, and to show them and guide them if it's working or it's not. So that's why we have regular catch-ups with my team. And once they know the process and everything, I find it's just then a matter of just troubleshooting. Hey, you got this coming up. What are you preempting? What are you, what's your thoughts around how we're going to address that? How these people here that haven't moved ahead, what's the plan? What's the strategy? How have you gone about it, et cetera, et cetera. But there needs to be a real clear guidance and process for all of that. So, but getting there, it's the juice is worth the squeeze, because it's amazing. I love it when I go to an event or something and I'm speaking somewhere and I get off and all of a sudden there's been a sale or two made. I'm like, just it's a great feeling,
Absolutely. Yeah. So in final kind of minutes, we've kind of very briefly touched on this business called Dent Global, and we've kind of pulled up the book, The Key Person of Influence. For those in my audience who haven't seen or heard of the program before, give us the overview, and perhaps, and if you want to, finish up with anything that you want people to know about that you're about to put on.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it, mate. And this business has been spawned from all of our passion. I think Dan, Glen, myself, Mike, Reid as well. Like, we've always had this passion for intersection of development, human potential, getting back to that sort of early stage personal development story, which is nice to reflect on, and our passion for entrepreneurship. So this business is an expression of that. And as I do more podcasts, I get clearer and clearer on this as I'm interviewed more, because it really is this desire to support business owners. Like, business is a challenging game. I absolutely applaud anyone who's got the gumption to get up and do it, and to sort of take on the problems of not just the market, but the problems of the team and the problems of suppliers. Like, they get my utmost respect, because it's not an easy thing. We have a different set of rules to people who are employed. So a lot of the challenges that a lot of our clients experience are things that are solvable and curable. There's been in growth here in this country. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in 1995, there's 250,000 businesses in play. In the year 2018, we crossed the 2.3 million mark.
Wow.
That's almost a tenfold number of businesses. So if we don't know how to stand out in the market, we compete on price. And that's a dangerous game to play, particularly as the overheads of your business grow when you're in growth mode. If you reduce your margins to make the sales, all of a sudden business owners have a money and time eating monster of a business that gives them less joy, less satisfaction. So a lot of our clients, they're often people very good, very talented, very skilled, great at what they're doing, but there's sometimes some fundamental challenges of competing on price, or having a business that's reliant on them because perhaps they've sold themselves as being the solution, and they create these bottlenecks, or perhaps they're serving too many markets and they're seen as a generalist, not a specialist. And they haven't gone through the mindset shift of thinking about, how do I engage and build trust with people at scale, people who I could serve and be seen as that specialist. So, and as a result of that, they're competing on price effectively. So we show them how to tackle those by applying a proven methodology that you and 3,500 of our clients have gone through. That shows them basically just how they can stand out, be seen as a specialist, add more value to people and charge more accordingly, but build a business model that's not reliant on them being there, that there is a framework, like the best example of that is like a 7 habits of highly effective people framework. And it's like, it's not me that gets the result, it's this framework thing. And that's how you get the business off it being focused on you, business leader and founder, but also makes it clear and easier for others to replicate the model. Which is how I can, sort of have a chat with Dan in the UK. We hatch up a plan for me to take over running Queensland and licensing the IP. He's never been here before. Well, of course he has. He hasn't been here in the last 5 years. But whilst I've been growing and doubling and tripling this business here, he hasn't set a foot here in this region. So once you have that, it makes it easier to expand and grow your business, whether you want to have a really nice lifestyle business, or you want to have a bit more of a performance business where you want to take on the world. So that's some of the things that it addresses in our environment. And there's 5 particular areas that business owners need to focus on. And once they've really mastered these 5 asset areas in their business, they're just like codes in a combination lock that once you do it, it's like bing, unlocks the potential of the business. And you've seen firsthand for yourself and through many in our environment that it just pops when it comes together. So if anyone's interested in knowing that, I mean, I've a couple of things going on. I've got my own podcast that's going live. It's called Queensland Business Influencers for Good. It's phenomenal. So it's a podcast. It stretches one's imagination. It inspires new possibilities and delivers practical strategies that optimize your business for good. So I'm shining a light on Queensland business leaders because I think Queensland entrepreneurs, as many are around the world, but Queensland has really got some pioneer entrepreneurs. So although it's being done for business owners here in Queensland, it's to showcase best practice so that anyone around the world can get access to that. But every episode is linked to a giving impact as well. So we're already up to about 7,000-8,000 giving impacts from the first few episodes I've recorded. Right. So that's cool. If you just go to QBIFG, so it stands for Queensland Business Influencers for Good, QBIFG.com.au, you can check out some of those latest episodes. And then the other thing is on that site there's a whole bunch of resources, or you could just Google Key Person of Influence Scorecard, KPI scorecard. You can get a test that assesses you in each of those 5 areas to assess how strong you are when it comes to pitching, publishing, product, profile, and partnerships, where your weaknesses are, but also it gives you a 35-page report, which shows you and gives you practical things you can do to improve in each of those 5 asset areas. So it's on the site, the QBIFG.com.au site, and it's also, if you just Google Key Person of Influence Queensland, Key Person of Influence Scorecard, you get access to that scorecard as well. It's a free little gift we've got for people.
Great stuff. And I'm not saying this to you. You already know this. So I'm saying to anybody else who's watching or listening, I cannot speak highly enough of the Key Person of Influence Accelerator program. My business is where it's at today, and that's only the beginning. We're about to go nuts in 2021 because of doing this program. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Mike, thanks so much for joining me today. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation, and we have gone way over time. I don't care. It's every single step has been worth it. So thank you so much for sharing all of your experience and your wisdom, and good on you, mate. Thank you.
Thank you, and right back at you, my friend. I applaud you for doing everything you do to support business owners. I feel that now more than ever in these times that we're in, we need to be doing what we can to support business owners in this game of business. It's a difficult landscape, and so for you to support businesses to get their first salesperson is an epic achievement, I think, for a lot of businesses. So I applaud the work you do in supporting business owners, because in these times that we're in, if every small business, getting back to that stat, 2.5 million businesses, which means there's probably about 2 million, about 80% of businesses are small, meaning they're doing less than 10, employing less than 10 people. And effectively, or it's less than 50 actually for a small business. But if each of those businesses, which would be about 2 million,